Alright, hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today, the bash changes. 1 week later, what has changed? How are you doing with them? Do you like them? Let me know in the comments how it's all going for you. For me personally, it hasn't been too bad. I was never a full reaction player when it came to bashes. It's sort of sometimes I would and sometimes I wouldn't. And even now, I feel like certain things are still kind of reactable if you're really tuned into it. It's not like it's like impossible. This is a follow-up to a video that I made about a week ago, right before the changes went live. And in that video, I made some mistakes. I made some generalizations that I'm going to correct in this one. And huge shout out to For Honor Info Hub. It's a great website. It's made by Freeze and his team, and if you haven't ever checked it out, you should. I'll leave a link in the description. If you've got a question about For Honor, it's probably there. But first off, before we get into this, I want to say thank you to everybody that's watched that video. It's definitely the best one on my channel right now that's done so far, and I wasn't expecting something with that kind of views. I think it's around 2,600 last I checked. I haven't been expecting anything like that this early in the game for a channel this small that hasn't really posted anything like that. But we're gonna try to strike gold again and make some good content here, right? I want to really want to get into some numbers and help explain some things for some people and just make these changes make sense. If you really know everything about the game, there probably won't be a whole lot in here for you, but certainly if you're new or if you're like how I was, a sort of more casual player, you kind of have an intuitive sense of these things, but you don't like really know why. And I've sort of done that research and put together some video presentations that'll help explain what's happening. So just to get into it, start off by going over what the changes were, and that's that all forward dodge bashes are now a 433 ms indicator that can come out 300 to 500 ms into the forward dodge input, with the exception of Medjay, who we'll get into towards the end of this video. So to get right into it, let's start by going over some things that didn't change. We'll have Sent here show us that he still cannot do his heavy finisher into his kick. He'll get hit out of it. And then next we'll have Orochi, and you see that he still has his infinite, which was to be expected, because all they did was speed it up, right? And we see that because of his properties, he can actually continue to do this out of any light hit stun that he applies, and that hit stun is going to be important later. I'm gonna be diving a little bit more into hit stun because it's something I did not properly get into in the last video, and it's actually incredibly important. It's actually probably the most important thing about all of this. Something else that didn't change, surprisingly to me, is Warlord can still maintain frame advantage after landing a heavy finisher and going into his bash, despite having his bash go from 600 ms cumulatively with the 100 ms input and 500 ms indicator to a 733 ms attack with the 300 ms fastest input and 433 ms indicator. Despite having it slowed down 133 ms in total, he can maintain this frame advantage. And as we can see with BP here, the same is still also true for him. He could still do this before the patch, and he's still doing it after the patch. And the reason why they can do this is because their heavy finishers apply something called heavy hit stun. So I'm going to bring up a screenshot here from For Honor Info Hub, and we can see in this little part that I'm highlighting that the hit stun for a heavy is 1,000 ms to attack, which means that after Warlord or BP lands their heavy finisher, you've got 1,000 ms before you can press a button, and your fastest button is going to be anybody's open or light at 500 ms. So the soonest you can hit BP or Warlord after they've landed the heavy finisher on you is 1.5 seconds. And knowing that the fastest they can bash is 733 ms, we can say, although I don't know exactly what their recovery is after landing, like how long before they can make another move, we can say for certain that it's somewhere below 700 ms. So that all told, that would be 1433 ms or less. However, BP and Warlord are not the only two that apply heavy hit stun with their finisher heavy in the game. And as we can see here from Yorm, she also cannot be interrupted after landing her heavy. Now, I'm not sure if this was present in the game before for the Legion kicks, because I did not test it. I only tested in that first video the Centurion and the Shaolin, whose heavy finishers only apply a medium hit stun, not a heavy hit stun. So it looks like it's a pretty tight window now. I'm not sure if that traded before. You're going to have to let me know in the comments if you know that, because I do not. And just to really drive this home, I'm going to show you Griffin here, whose heavy finisher also applies heavy hit stun. And that's another thing, is that just because it's a heavy attack, it doesn't mean it applies heavy hit stun. There's certain attacks that apply heavy hit stun, and actually most heavy finishers in this game are only going to apply a medium hit stun. Victory! So I can't say for certain if that was in the game before, but it certainly is now. So you're gonna have to keep that in mind if you get hit by these. That hit, very important, because if you block, you'll notice that the recovery is only 200 ms before you can attack again, and then in that case you'll definitely beat a bash attempt afterwards. They will not maintain frame advantage on that. But speaking of changes to frame advantage that have happened, let's bring on the monster, Tiandi. So, yeah. Now, previously, Tiandi was not like Orochi. He could not just keep bashing people indefinitely, but now, you can see he can. Out of any light hit stun, doesn't matter. He beats Mr. Larry here to the punch. And this is incredibly strong for him, because before, whilst the dodge forward light did have frame advantage, you could not just continuously chain bash, and you couldn't chain back into a bash after the undodgeable and maintain frame advantage. But now you can. Any kind of light hit stun, light finisher, doesn't matter, any of it. And the same now is also true for Zanhu, because while there's no discernible difference between their ability to dodge out of their recovery, so off of any light hit stun that you can apply, Zanhu can go right back into that bash and you cannot stun him, which is a big change. Because, I mean, previously, and I messed it up a little bit here, but, you know, you could not do this with Zanhu. And now you can, and you're going to want to keep this in mind, because there's a lot of people that don't know about this, and they're going to try to light you, and you're just going to bash it, and you're going to be able to keep the pressure on. So now, against Tiandi, definitely against Tiandi, but also Zanhu, you're going to need to make a read. Now, it kind of needs to be said that Zanhu is nowhere near as strong as Tiandi's mix-up is on this, because Zanhu doesn't have a dodge forward undodgeable, right? He's just got another like undodge forward heavy that's feintable. But another big reason for why Zanhu's not quite as strong is that he has a rather long general forward dodge recovery at 700 ms. So if you do not immediately choose an option, right, either to go into another bash or I'm not sure if heavy, the heavy to the feint will beat that and you'll be able to block it. Right now, if you can see from that clip, you eat that light. You can't even block it. That's coming. Nothing you can do about it, which is not true for Tiandi. Tiandi's dodge forward recovery allows him to get the light parry if you try to interrupt him, and he read that and he dodged forward empty, and he can just parry that, and Zanhu cannot. Zanhu can't even block it, and that's just because Tiandi has 100 ms lower forward dodge recovery than Zanhu. So that's kind of another reason why Zanhu's is not nearly as strong as Tiandi's, but that is just something to be aware of. We can say pretty definitively that Zanhu got stronger, but nowhere near as strong as Tiandi, and we can also say Orochi got stronger, but and probably in like a not quite the same way. He's probably still stronger than Zanhu chain-wise, other than the unblockable, of course. Zanhu's large sweeping unblockables are quite nice in 4s. But I want to know what you think about this. Do you think that this should stay in the game or not? I think personally that Tiandi's definitely needs to go. I think that character is like crazy and has enough going for him. I don't think he needs this. However, Zanhu, on the other hand, whilst the change sort of did the same thing to both of them, I don't think it makes Zanhu nearly as strong as it makes Tiandi, and I think Zanhu could keep this and stay like relatively like fine to fight. So I know like any sort of general change would kind of mess them both up, but I sort of personally am hoping that they sort of change this on Tiandi, but then like don't change it on Zanhu. I don't know. You can let me know how you feel about that personally. And in general, there's also another thing I want to talk about. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I do not know the specifics of why this happens, but with the new changes, there has been introduced a sort of single dodge timing for certain characters if they don't have a like a forward dodge feint move that they can guard break out of, and this has sort of been true for Zanhu for a while, and there's a video on the Filthy Spaniards channel you can check out that explains all that, and I'm assuming that there's something similar going on there now for the likes of BP and Warlord. I know people are talking about that if you dodge early enough, you can just beat all the options, because there's a window has been sort of taken away where previously you couldn't beat all the options because they could bash sooner, and now that they can't, this new window has opened up where you have a single dodge time to beat that. But I don't know the specifics on that, and to be honest, it's probably not going to matter for the grand majority of us. That's definitely going to be like a pro player, like top 1% grandmaster kind of deal, and even for the grandmasters, like online, just it probably is not going to take a whole lot of effect. I know I've seen a with 1S video where it's kind of gets showed off where he fights somebody who can deal with his BP recently, but yeah, I think for the vast majority of players that's not going to be a deal. Obviously they need to fix that. I don't think that should be possible. I don't think you should just be able to beat an entire mix-up with a single option, because then it's probably by definition not a mix-up, right? But I've stalled long enough. It is now time to talk about the Meje. So, if you don't already know, whilst it is a very tight window and it can be difficult to hit without some practice, eventually here JJ will attack somewhere I'm not blocking, and I will be able to hit this timing where I do not trade with Jang Jun. I absolutely outright beat him to the punch, and this is incredibly broken. Whilst it's definitely not easy to hit without some practice, with a little bit of practice, anybody could hit this. Even I've gotten better at it, certainly. And I want to kind of go into why this is possible and what they kind of need to do to change this, because this cannot stay. So we're going to bring that screenshot back, and what we want to focus on is the difference that between recovery that a low hit stun attack gives between a dodge and an attack. So you'll see that the soonest you can attack after receiving a low hit stun attack, which is most opener lights in the game, if not all of them, except maybe Shigoki's, is 600 MS. So Jang Jun hits you with his light, and then 600 MS after that you can press a button, and for most people that is, for everybody, that's going to be your 500 MS light opener is the fastest thing you can press, right? And that's going to be all told 1100 MS before you impact with JJ, right? And JJ's chain heavy is 900 MS, but there is a 200 MS chain link that is present for most, if not all, of the attacks in the game. I know there's a few exceptions, but I think they're very niche cases. Not generally speaking, JJ and most other characters, they're gonna land this light, and then 200 MS later they can throw the heavy, and that's gonna be a 900 MS heavy in JJ's case, right? So all told, that 200 plus 900 is 1100 MS, right? So, and you sort of know this intuitively before, that if JJ doesn't delay at all, that you would trade with him with a light, right? But Medjay, on the other hand, you'll notice that the dodge out of light hit stun is 500 MS, and because he can input the new 433 MS indicator at 100 MS, he's working with a 1033 MS interrupt. So it's very tight. You know, you've got 66 milliseconds to hit this, but you can outright beat JJ, and in fact anybody with a light hit stun to a 900 MS next move, you just beat them. And so some other examples of this in the game are going to be sort of Shaman's light to side undodgeable. You beat that with him. Aramusha light to heavy finisher, right? So if he lights and then same sides a heavy, it's going to go into that finisher, and then you can beat that, and which means you also beat the deadly feint. And then Washokoki's a bit of an exception because I believe some of his lights apply medium hit stun, and even his heavies apply medium hit stun. His charged heavies are like so long, you can just outright beat them anyway. And definitely like a Kyoshin, the down stance into heavy, that's not even close. You beat him like basically as he's coming out of the stance. And so yeah, this definitely needs to go. This is way too strong, and I think the fix is pretty easy. Just make the attack come out 200 MS into the dodge instead of 100 MS into the dodge, and that just immediately fixes all these problems. And it's let's be honest, not gonna change much about how Medjay feels in like neutral, right? Like they wanted the bash to be fast and impressive, specifically for Medjay because it doesn't do a lot of damage, and they felt like he wasn't performing well. I don't think adding an extra 100 MS is going to change much, and in fact, you don't even need to add a full 100 MS. You could add 66 MS and it would trade. And I'm sure, while it sort of sucks for JJ that he trades, trading a bash for 27 damage or whatever Jang Jun's heavy finisher does, it's certainly not. You would rather just light at that point if you were going to try for the trade, because at least you trade damage for damage, right? Even though it's a bad trade, it's something, right? But yeah, it's probably going to be everything for today's video. I want to thank you for watching. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel for more. I'm going to be doing probably like little videos like this, explaining things that happens in patches, just trying to, whilst going over the numbers, sort of providing visual representation and like keeping it simple, right? I'm not going to be doing like frame checks or anything like that. I'm going to leave that to Freeze and his gang, and again, shout out to them for everything that they've done to make the Info Hub website, and I'm going to leave that in the description. While it's not fully up to date to the changes right now, I'm sure it will be soon. And yeah, but other than that, I want to thank you guys for watching, and have a wonderful day. Cheers.